we go? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm going to close this door. Oh, thank you.
You want it to be extra hot in there?
Yeah, it is kind of, well, you know what? Leave it open. Yeah, it is kind of hot in here. I'm sorry. Whatever. Hi, I'm Jason Tarasek. I'm a cannabis attorney. Hi, guys. With Vicente LLP. I am the Minnesota office of the Vicente firm, a national cannabis firm. Our headquarters is in Denver, Colorado. We have a big office in Boston, and then little satellite offices like mine kind of scattered throughout the country. So we try to stay on top of what's happening in cannabis everywhere throughout the country and increasingly throughout the world. I just attended a indigenous cannabis summit in Wisconsin, and you say, well, what on earth are you doing in Wisconsin talking about cannabis? Nothing's legal there. Well, something's brewing over there. And, the fact that we've legalized here only increases the pressure on Wisconsin. Not to say that it's going to be a slam dunk, but there might be something percolating. No guarantees, of course. So Brian Vicente and many people with my firm were instrumental in getting the Colorado legalization measure passed in 2012. And we've been helping people in every legal market ever since across the country. I've been in this space since 2018 when I started as a citizen lobbyist, working on my own, like Don Quixote, battling those windmills. And one thing led to another. I became the Marijuana Policy Project lobbyist in 2019. We got a hearing on a legalization bill in April 2019. How many people are from Minnesota? Vast majority. You may remember that. It was in the news a lot. It was exciting for us. It was the first time we ever got a hearing on a legalization bill in Minnesota, and it went down in flames, of course. It was in a Republican-led committee, but the amount of news coverage we got really kind of helped launch us to where we are today. And certainly the Democrats were paying attention. They recognized that it was very popular with their constituents, and frankly, a lot of Republicans recognized it was popular with a lot of their constituents too. So unlike a lot of states that have legalized adult use cannabis, when I say adult use cannabis, a lot of people say recreational cannabis. I'm going to use the term adult use cannabis. When I say cannabis, I'm talking about marijuana, okay? I've been taught, these terms, and I respect this, these terms have racist origins, right? And so we're trying to move beyond that. So I hope you're up to my lingo now. So yeah, I've been working, I guess, in the upper Midwest for a number of years on cannabis issues, of course, helping people in the hemp sector, which is the only sector at this moment that still exists. My friend Will Blauvelt, who will follow me, he'll speak next. He was working for House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler when we got our edible cannabinoid product law passed in 2022, which I don't know if any of us could have predicted that the explosion of hemp-derived THC beverages would be the thing that emerged from that, but boy, has it ever, right? Now they're everywhere. To this day, you can sell that stuff without a license anywhere you want, to anyone you want, right? And we're coming up on 3 years. Honestly, that makes me a little uncomfortable, but we passed the bill we could in a Republican-controlled Senate. And yes, there's a long story there, but I won't bore you with that. But that will, I'll get into this a little bit, but that will no longer be true. You will not be able to sell that stuff anywhere you want without permission from anyone much longer. You will need a license to sell that, and you will need to have your to ensure that your products are tested. And frankly, it looks like you're going to have to enter that product into metric, which I'm sure will not please anyone. So I'm here to talk about the business opportunities primarily today. My firm is helping people get licensed, hopefully, in this market. We have many, many clients that we're helping. Our process is that if and when you hire us, we will sign a licensing project manager to you. Of course, you got 2 more weeks, less than 2 weeks, if you want to apply in this licensing window. So if you're interested, we got to get rolling soon. But hopefully you've got that all set already. If not, come talk to me afterwards. But we've got it down to a science. We've got a team of people working on the licensing process. And frankly, after we went through the pre-approval round last fall that was unfortunately canceled, it's the same application by and large. So we've got our plans in place. This, you may remember, this chart became the basis of a Star Tribune front page paper a few years ago. they got a lot of people excited about cannabis, including me, which shows that cannabis in Minnesota is projected to be a $1.5 billion industry, right? It's probably something approaching that now, right? But it's an unregulated market. I would always joke, or I would always laugh rather, when I would meet with legislators and they would say, I don't want to create a cannabis market. And I would tell them, well, it exists. We're just talking about regulating it and making sure the products are safe and that we're keeping it away from children. So this is, once we start regulating and taxing it, this is the numbers that you will see, hopefully, here in Minnesota. So we've obviously had a few hiccups. You know, I don't know if anyone was here last year, but I was already pretty jaded last year. I mean, even more jaded now, but you know, we're getting to the point where it's possible OCM's going to start issuing licenses next month, April. I don't know. We haven't really been too clear about exactly when they're going to issue those things. So we're getting there. And I really hope that litigation does not stop this process. It doesn't look like it will. It's always a possibility, of course. There are still a number of lawsuits in place. But I'm hoping we actually have a market launch relatively soon. This could be informal. If you have questions as I go, I'm happy to take questions as we go here. You know, a large part of the attraction of the Minnesota market, of course, is that we're surrounded by prohibition states, including Wisconsin, right? Michigan's not too far away. They're obviously an adult use market. Illinois is not too far away. They're an adult use market. But for all of those people in Wisconsin looking to buy cannabis, they're either going to have to go to Michigan, Illinois, or come across the border to Minnesota. So you'll see our data reflects that a lot of those potential consumers will be coming from other markets, other states, I should say, Iowa also. So, you know, I think when you're thinking about maybe opening a dispensary, I'm sorry, I keep asking you to do this. How many people want to open a dispensary? Okay, so property is key. As you know, I hope you're scoping out properties. Whether you hire me or not, I do have some real estate broker connections that might be of assistance to you. There are a lot of people, of course, looking for the perfect property. And we have an economist on staff who prepared these slides, and he's also crunching the numbers for people to determine, I guess, what particular sites might be the most profitable. So I will say, if you're following the news on local zoning, Minneapolis and St. Paul, God bless them, at this moment, I don't think they're going to be limiting the number of dispensaries in their cities. And when I met with the planners of Minneapolis, I said, you know, why are you doing that? And to them, it's an equity play. They want it to be fair. I get that, I guess, but to me, the number of dispensaries we're going to see in these cities is going to be astronomical, and it's going to be difficult for everyone to survive because I'm just talking from a business standpoint now. You know, when you got unlimited supply of dispensaries, it's going to kind of be a race to the bottom, and I'm worried that may backfire on those cities. I hope to be proven wrong, but I'm nervous we're going to have too many dispensaries in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they might. You're nodding. They might revisit that solution sometime soon. I mean, when I was doing my advocacy work, my activism work, I visited Denver, I think in 2019, and was surprised to see that there were more dispensaries than Starbucks in that city, and they weren't doing well, right? There were too many of them, and I'm afraid we're going down that path. But, you know, those cities have spoken, and they seem to be in the unlimited dispensary track. Okay, so broadly speaking, these are the licenses available. I think you know that there are only 4 licenses that are going to be subject to a lottery this year. Those are the ones that are capped. Those are your mezzo business license, your cultivator. If you want to send me an email later, I can send these slides around, right? There's nothing like incredibly original in these. So your mezzo business, cultivator, manufacturer, and your retailer license. Okay, those are the 4 that'll be subject to a lottery. I'll get into the numbers on those shortly. But all the other licenses are uncapped, unlimited number, including micro businesses. So I don't know if anyone's submitted an application recently, but it looks like the micro business license type is north of 500 applications already, with almost 2 weeks to go in the licensing round. So the human nature is to wait until the end. So it wouldn't surprise me that we see thousands of micro business license applications come in. And again, this is not an onerous application process. This is not a merit-based process. This is if you check the boxes, you're in. You should get a license. So certainly no guarantee, but nearly a guarantee that you'll be getting a license. And I mean, just look at the dollar amounts, right? Like, why on earth wouldn't you apply for a micro business? It's $500, $0 license fee. I mean, there's some social engineering going on here, right, from the legislature there. If you follow the legalization process, you may have heard a gazillion times from the legislators and advocates, et cetera. They said we're trying to create a craft cannabis market along the lines of the microbrewery market for small Minnesota businesses. So, no doubt in my mind that they have crafted these application fees to steer people into the micro business category. And I'll talk a little bit more about what a micro business means, but honestly, like, you gonna plunk down a ton of money and cross your fingers and hope you win the lottery, or are you gonna get almost a guaranteed micro business? I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I might try for a micro business. The odds are much, much, much better. Okay, so like I said, you will eventually need, and OCM is saying by this fall, they're gonna start licensing our hemp-derived THC product manufacturers and retailers. So again, this stuff is sold everywhere now. Yoga studios, right? Massage parlors, restaurants, bars. I assume they're all going to purchase these licenses, but maybe not everybody. But I expect it will still be very prevalent. Yes?
Will hemp-derived edibles and stuff be able to cross state lines?
Well, so the question is, will hemp-derived edibles be able to cross state lines? Yes. So I'm going to give you a kind of a complicated answer, because if you're a manufacturer in Minnesota of, let's just call it hemp-derived THC products, and you want to ship them out for sale elsewhere, you don't necessarily need a license for that from OCM, right? It's beyond their jurisdiction. OCM's jurisdiction is Minnesota. And they have produced some talking points on that. If you want to import, and this is where it's very controversial at the moment, if you want to import hemp-derived THC products for sale in Minnesota, neither of these license types will help you. Rather, you got to get a cannabis wholesaler license, quote unquote cannabis. So that's a marijuana license, right? And a lot of our long-standing wholesalers, the liquor wholesalers, right, who are moving beer and wine and spirits around, they don't necessarily want to be a cannabis business. But we probably made a mistake in crafting the bill by leaving out a lower potency wholesaler license type. And it was discussed, it was dropped, it was forgotten about, and some of those wholesalers are freaking out at the moment because they realize, oh my gosh, we need this cannabis license, and that doesn't necessarily fit into our business model. But, as Jeff O'Brien knows, I'm sure, there is currently legislation pending that would add a hemp-derived wholesaler license type. Whether that passes, I don't know. Probably. I don't know who on earth is going to object to that. There may be objectionable facets to that, but it just kind of makes sense to add that. Okay, so generally speaking, in the licensing scheme, vertical integration is prohibited. So when we talk about vertical integration, we're talking about cultivation, manufacturing, and sale, the three tiers of the supply chain. Generally, that's prohibited unless you have a meso business or a micro business license. Those two license types are the only two that you can operate each tier. You can cultivate, manufacture, and sell products. Interestingly, you don't necessarily have to activate all three of those tiers. Does that make sense to people? So again, a lot of my clients are pivoting to micro business, and they only intend on operating a dispensary. And that is permissible under the law. And I asked OCM that question just yesterday because I wanted to be sure I could tell you that truthfully today. So you only need to activate one of those three tiers within 18 months of license award. You don't necessarily ever need to grow or manufacture. You can just run your dispensary under the micro business license. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. For a meso business, you have to activate two of those three tiers. But honestly, the meso business I could see most of those folks are probably going to operate all three. Those are probably your bigger operators who are probably trying to take advantage of that vertical integration. With the economies of scale, the efficiencies of running it all on your own, just again, I'll come back next year. I'll say, oops, that was totally wrong. But that's how I anticipate that may be playing out.
If you started with a micro dispensary, could you later do a cultivation as well with that same license, or do you have to apply for it all at once?
So the question is, if you started with a micro, could you eventually?
Like just a micro with a dispensary, could you later cultivate as well?
Yes. So remember, you have a cultivation component to the micro business license type already that you can activate up to 5,000 square feet of indoor flowering canopy. You could potentially down the road, not right now under the rules. I'm going to get in some very complicated rules on which licenses you can hold at the same time, but OCM has made it clear that they recognize this bill, these rules are going to need to be changing over time to respond to market dynamics. And it wouldn't surprise me if they loosen things up over time. They've already said that, once your foot is in the door, once you can show you're operating a license successfully, they may allow you to scale up. So moving from a micro to a meso, perhaps, moving from a micro to a bulk cultivator, perhaps. I don't know if that's going to happen necessarily, but that OCM, I think, is anticipating that may happen. I got a pop-up window. Okay, so generally speaking, not a ton of restrictions on ownership, right? But of course, there are these true party and interest provisions that restrict the number of licenses that certain investors can own. Super complicated. I'm not going to take a deep dive in that unless somebody would like to talk to me after this. But these are the general, pretty non-restrictive ownership restrictions on licensing. I will say, the original bill that we passed basically said some crimes will be disqualifying. And it'll be up to the OCM to decide what those crimes are later. You may have seen the draft rules that were percolating. And I was a little surprised to see that a lot of drug crimes will actually disqualify you. Some felony level non-cannabis crimes will disqualify you, but no crimes of violence apparently will disqualify you. So, I don't know how they made those decisions, but they at least are on the books in draft form at the moment. Sorry. Okay. So again, you're generally limited to holding one license type at a time. There are certain license types you can hold together. You'll see that the cannabis event is kind of like plug and play. You can own that with just about anything. So a cannabis event organizer can essentially throw a party, right, for a couple days. I always think of the Soundset Music Festival that was around. It might be coming back. I could see them relaunching that as a cannabis festival. I mean, that would seem to go together, right? So your retailer, this is a nice combination. Your retailer actually can hold a delivery license too. Cannabis cultivator, you can pair that with a manufacturing license, so that'll give you 2 tiers of that 3-tier chain. Wholesaler, we discussed that. This transporter, we may have overdone it on licenses, right? I don't want to be too derogatory here, but I mean, transporter might not really be necessary. But that is a license type to transport cannabis between licensed businesses. And what's that got to do? Add costs, right? I get it. Again, I think this is an equity play. You carve out a sort of a smaller license type for people without millions of dollars laying around to enter the market. I understand, but I think the customer is going to end up paying in the end for this. Yes.
If you had a micro and you had a retail and a cultivating place, do you have to have a transporter license to move a product from one place to the other?
Good question, and thank you for asking a question I can answer without referring to my notes. No, you may transfer your own product between your 3 tiers. So the question was, if I have a micro, I'm growing, I'm manufacturing, I'm selling, do I need to hire a transporter to move it between those 3 tiers? No, thank goodness. They did have the sense to say you can move it between your tiers. And you do not need to co-locate each of those tiers at the same place, which is nice. Because you can see, hey, I'm a Minneapolis dispensary. I need to have an extra big property in Minneapolis to grow my product, holy smokes, that's going to add a lot of expense. I want to grow up in the boonies, right, where property is cheap. You can, thankfully, you can have a grow facility wherever you want. It doesn't need to be co-located with your retail space. Testing facility can't hold another license with that, of course, because there's an inherent conflict of interest, right? You don't want the umpire secretly having a team's jersey on underneath his shirt, right? Okay. The delivery service. So I will say I'm representing a few tribes on compact negotiations, which was in the news recently and was not well received. You know, I'll just say, throwing my opinion out there, like the fact that the tribes will have this opportunity to open dispensaries off tribal land, that's been in the bill since 2023. So if you've been paying any level of attention, you should have known that that was in the bill. And not all the tribes are jumping in, right? And there's only like 10 or 11 tribes who even possibly might jump into this market. 5 dispensaries each, okay, 50, 55 most, when we're talking about 500 micro businesses, like, I get that maybe people are mad that the tribes have this early opportunity, but at the end of the day, like, there's not going to be that many tribal-run dispensaries. But I will say there may be a provision that will allow OCM licensed. This might be the most important thing you heard today. Okay, there may be an opportunity for OCM licensed delivery services to partner with tribes to receive product from tribal land and deliver that to any customer in the state. Okay. Remember that. Might be an opportunity. These compacts are not done. They're in draft form. I can say that much because one of the compacts was leaked to the press, and that provision is in the leaked version. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You're saying that wholesaler license may allow that receiving product from tribal land to any of the dispensaries with the wholesaler license?
Delivery license.
The delivery license.
It may be possible. I don't know yet. None of the compacts are final to my knowledge. It may be possible for an OCM licensed delivery service to retrieve product from a tribal nation and deliver that to a customer elsewhere.
And the wholesaler is a standalone license, like all product doesn't have to go through a wholesaler.
Correct.
It's just an option.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
With the opportunity for tribes to open off tribal land, are they my understanding is they're not subject to the same tax regulations. What will that do, opinion, on kind of the race to the bottom for people that are located near tribal dispensaries?
Okay, so the question is, will the tribes have the same tax burden that other licensed businesses have?
Both in like the cannabis tax and just general sales tax, you're talking like 20% difference there, right out of the chute.
Right, so as I understand it, this gets complicated, right? Because there are certain tribes, including Sweetest Grass, you may see them in the exhibitor hall, currently operating adult use dispensaries on tribal land. I don't believe they're charging tax for those products. To the extent they want to open a dispensary off tribal land, it may in fact be taxed. That is actually a sticking point in the negotiations. I think it's no secret that the White Earth Nation may be the closest to finalizing a compact, and I honestly don't know what their tax percentage will look like, but that is an open question. And, you know, tribal nations are sovereign. They have an argument they shouldn't be taxed at all. Then again, they're getting the privilege of opening off tribal land, so there's this tension. And it's not easy to resolve. Did I say that definitely enough? Yes, okay. Remains to be seen what, if any, tax. But I hear you, like talking about a long-term advantage in the market, yeah, the tax could, I understand. Okay, moving on. All right, I think we talked about that. I'm gonna keep moving here. Okay. So Jeff, I may call on you for a question. I told you not to ask me a hard question, but I might give you one. I just corrected this slide this morning because I had an or in between, may not exceed 5,000 square feet of indoor plant canopy or up to 1/2 acre of mature flowering plants. I think it's actually an and. I think you can grow indoor and outdoor together. But I honestly couldn't remember. I took the or out. So remains to be seen. If anyone else knows this for a fact, let me know. It's or? I think you can read it both ways. Anyway, I'll get back to you on this. I seem to remember it was written in a confusing way, and then I reached out to OCM, and I think they told me it was an and, but I don't think the statute really says that. Anyway, for safety, let's say there's an or. So, you know, you can grow outside. Good luck in Minnesota's harsh climate growing marijuana outside, but people are going to do it. And it looks like these hoop houses or these sort of temporary grow houses are going to be considered outdoor, I think, under the rules. So that's an opportunity, I suppose. You certainly get more acreage, perhaps, that way than being stuck inside. But we'll see. You know, cannabis entrepreneurs are crafty. They're going to figure out a way to do this to maximize product yield, I'm sure. Okay, so again, micro business, only one dispensary. Mezzo gives you 3. Cannabis retailer gives you 5, but remember, you can't operate more than one of those in one city, and you can't operate more than 3 in a county. I think people forget that a lot, but that's tucked in the middle. Yeah.
How many of just the cultivation licenses are gonna be awarded?
Oh, that might be on an upcoming slide. How many cultivation licenses?
The 30,000 square foot.
That's in my other, sorry, I have that in a written note. So the question is, how many cultivation licenses are going to be awarded? 1 second. So this is our OCM produced cannabis business license application review and qualifications guide. If you don't have it, pick one up. It's on their website. How many cultivation licenses? 25 for social equity applicants, 25 for everybody else. And remember, as I understand it, the lottery for the social equity folks would be conducted first, maybe like the day before the next round, and anybody who doesn't win in the social equity round can choose to be entered into the next round. So I don't know how many folks are in that round, but it's probably hundreds at this point. So while I have the numbers, 50 mezzo businesses for SEA folks, 50 for everyone else, 12 manufacturing for both of those categories, and 75 retailer licenses for those categories.
75 times 5.
75 times, correct, yes. So our local units of government, they don't have a ton of power in terms of restricting the ability of a cannabis business to operate in their jurisdiction, but they can use their zoning power to constrain where those businesses can operate. And they can limit the number of dispensaries to 1 for every 12,500 residents. Curiously, if you saw tucked back in the rules, the tribal dispensaries will count toward those totals. That, to me, is a little controversial, but we'll see if that comes out in the final draft. So, generally speaking, you know, you just, again, got to check the boxes in terms of providing OCM with this data. You don't need a property in place before you apply. The idea is that once you get your license, you can raise some revenue and then go out and get some property. You probably want to at least start talking to landlords, start talking to local governments and advising them that you're thinking about opening there, because if they say absolutely not, well, that would be good to know before you went through all the pain and heartache of applying. I'm running out of time. Let me see if I can find a juicy one. Oh, okay. The unique features. Yeah. So there's some weird stuff in our law, of course, but there's some really exciting stuff too. The cannabis events is really interesting. Every micro business license can also operate a consumption lounge. You can have edible, not only hemp-derived products, but cannabis products at your micro business location. That's pretty cool. That does not exist everywhere in the country. Municipal cannabis stores. Oh my God. Just like our muni liquor stores, you might see these municipal cannabis stores opening. That is, talk about controversial, man. You got a federal illegal controlled substance federally controlled substance sold by a unit of government? Okay, I mean, I think what we're gonna see is a lot of those governments are gonna be hiring consultants to run those things, because it gets pretty thorny. But super interesting. This time next year, hopefully we'll have a rolled out market to discuss. All the stops and starts have been super frustrating, but I hope you're still excited. I hope you were still ready to join this industry, and my time is up. Thank you very much.